Sway Health.
Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder of Sway Health. I'm excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in healthcare marketing. And our guests today are Wendy Porter. She's founder of Wendy Porter Events, and Michelle Hogan, executive producer at OVC Productions. Welcome.
John, great to be here.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have you on the program. Events have become such an important part of everything in healthcare marketing, I think, and you all have such a breadth of experience. I've worked with a lot in the Sway Health community, so excited to have you on the program. Wendy, let's kick it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Wendy Porter Events.
Sure. So my background is in healthcare marketing. Came out of big corporate. I'm a corporate survivor, is what I like to say. So I was actually at United Healthcare. I was head of events for the Medicare division for about 13 years, and then was downsized back in October of 2015, and then started my company in November of 2015. So I just celebrated my 10-year
Wow.
anniversary here on November
Congrats.
30th. And in my career in events, I've produced about 1,300 events and managed over $200 million of budget and all that fun stuff. And Michelle Hogan here, who will introduce herself in a second, has been sort of one of my go-to vendors for 15-ish years now, and helps me with all things production. So it's kind of fun to be on a podcast together.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Michelle, so how about yourself and OVC Productions?
Okay. Well, OVC Productions is we've been in business for over 25 years doing productions for the healthcare industry, the dental industry, pretty much everything you can imagine, banking, jewelry, a wide breadth of different demographics and groups. But we do stage set design, production. We actually fabricate the stage environments that we create. We work with speakers, doing the scripting and the prompting, do all of the full scale production, which video and audio and video lighting and all those kinds of good things, and as well as the ballroom decor and setup and galas and environments, entertainment, all that fun, great stuff.
She
Wow.
brings it to life.
I was going to say, between the two of you, is there anything you
Bring
haven't
the
done?
vision to life. Yes, yes.
That's
Is there
awesome.
anything we haven't done? Not much, honestly.
We have not jumped out of a plane, but we'll save that for
That's
our next
true.
life.
Is there an event jumping out of a plane? Interesting.
Could be.
An in-air event lasts 5 minutes. Is that how
Yes,
That's interesting.
exactly.
Well, let's talk about it, live events, right? I think it's been an interesting journey. COVID made us ask some interesting questions, and we've seen a huge bounce back. But, Wendy, why don't you start off? Like, why do live events still matter? And are these events still worth it when budgets are so tight for, especially in healthcare?
Great question. So, in my 23 years of doing this, we always sort of intuitively knew that events were important. But we didn't really have the research or the metrics behind it to prove that, right? So I always found myself talking to leadership and trying to make that point and not having the backup necessarily to prove it. So since COVID was a little bit of a silver lining for us because when we had to switch to
Mhm.
virtual, all of a sudden we had data. We had information about, people attending events and what they did on the event and all of that. And so the great output of that was now we have tech. Since COVID, we have technology that then can help us really track the data around events and prove the ROI. Additionally, there's been some research now that has come out since we got back from COVID, since 2022, that shows us that events are the number one marketing channel for both ROI and building trust. So now it's not just me saying it, right? I actually have research to prove it, and I have the ability to calculate ROI against events. And so now I can actually make those cases to senior management. So they really are the most important thing you can be doing in marketing.
Yeah. Michelle, what would you add? I mean, I heard someone today say something
Oh, sure.
interesting where they're like, live events is the only place where you can create that trusted human
Mhm.
connection because we're not going to events for information anymore. We're going for that connection. But what would you add, Michelle?
Absolutely. And just to really reiterate what Wendy was saying, before you have the meetings and it's really hard to tell, did they get something out of it? How impactful was the meeting? And I even heard from other producers before COVID, they said, we're hearing that the future is people are going to stop flying to events, which cost money, and they're going to stop renting the big hotel rooms and the sleeping rooms and things like that. And they're really just going to go through the computer and just get all the business done that way. And from a production and producer standpoint, you just think, wow, is that where we're going? Are we going to be the blockbuster of this industry and just kind of go away? Well, then COVID hit, and there could not have been a more poignant example of what people need. You can put them in sitting at their desk and looking at their screen and watching their CEO tell them, what they need to do for sales and try to motivate them through a screen. And that it really only lasted for so long, thank goodness. But then when we were finally able to get back together and produce these meetings that have people in there doing the breakouts and doing the general sessions with a lot of interaction, it was the biggest validation that humans need humans. We thrive on each other's brains. We gather so much of our energy and our enthusiasm from each other that we would have a take a break in the middle of the session, and we couldn't get them back in the room because they were so engaged with each other and like, oh my gosh, so and so, I haven't seen you in so long. And I mean, hugs abound. People are like, forget the mask. I want to shake your hand. I want to grab your elbow. I want to let you know that I really am excited to see you. And that's where Wendy's data and our human interaction just solidified the fact that we need each other, and the meetings couldn't be more effective since then.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to think about, kind of what my friend said, which is that we need that human interaction to build the trust with each other. Because right now there's so much information online. AI can produce nearly
Right,
anything that we want,
Right.
good, bad, and
right,
otherwise, right?
right.
That the human connection, I think, creates another level of trust between people. Wendy, what would you say? What does it take to build trust, and how can events help to build that trust between people?
It's a great question. So I was actually just talking about this earlier today. There's a study on return on emotion. So
Hmm.
that's a thing. It's
Mhm.
not just return on investment. There's return on objectives, return on emotion. And there were five different categories that they measured to determine the engagement that happened at an event. And I don't have those at my fingertips. I should have thought of writing this down before our call. But really interesting research that just talks about how events create that, right? They create this connectivity and this emotion, and emotion is what creates a memory, right? So I always say, when you think back to when you were in college, right? What do you remember? Do you remember how your college showed up on a piece of paper, or do you remember an event that you went to when you were in college? And I bet 100% of you will say, I remember what it felt like and what, that event that I went to when I was in college, not how it showed up on a marketing brochure, right? So I like to call it 3D marketing, right?
Hmm.
It's a tapestry of a company. It's the one place where you get product, marketing, sales, customer retention, operations, all of those people working together to showcase the company.
Interesting. Michelle, I'd love to hear your perspective as someone that
Sure.
designs the events and
Hmm.
designs, whether it's building trust or kind of Wendy talked about emotion or building credibility. Like,
Absolutely.
how does an event's design directly affect those things and the audience's emotion and credibility around what they're feeling?
Sure, absolutely. I think trust and believability, like I want to trust you, I want to believe what you're telling me. It really comes down to authenticity. And that authenticity comes through in the stage set environment. So the first thing they do when you open the doors, the first time they walk into that ballroom, what do they see? Do they see a bright bright light ballroom with hard chairs and white tablecloths and just your basic stage set, or do they feel like they've walked into an intentional space where you've got really great lighting and soft seating and beautiful linens and things that make you comfortable just in first to sit down in that environment. But then you look at the stage set, and you can actually take a stage where if you've got a message that's going to be a challenging one to deliver, and you've got a panel of experts up there or your C-suite team, you can actually create a more semicircular space to where you're now engaging the audience rather than being flat and back on the back of the stage. You've got an environment that has graphics and content that really sets the point home, hits the mark of what the message is, but then also creating that environment where you're wrapping yourself almost around your audience to make them feel like you're leaning in and wanting to hear what they have to say. They're there to hear the direction they need from their leadership, but they also want to feel like they're being heard as well. So a big Q&A at the end of that best, that setting that really engages the audience makes them really feel like part of the team and that they're one as far as trying to find solutions or hitting those sales goals or really accomplishing something together. It really can be conveyed through the set, through the lighting, through the furnishings and the message.
Interesting. I'd love to hear maybe a bad example. Do you have an example of a conference you went to? Obviously not one of your own, you'd never do it, but where
Right.
you're
Oh,
like,
I
they
would not
missed
do
the
that.
mark. Where you're
Oh,
like, hey, they missed the
absolutely.
mark. And what did they do that kind of missed the mark based on what experience
Mhm.
should they have created? And what did they do instead that kind of, is it that bright ballroom? Or, I'd love to hear an example
Sure.
of one that you saw that was like, dang, they had an opportunity here and they missed it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting that I just went to one last month where I was a guest. I love being a guest. I don't like to be that critiquer in the audience, but I am. So we're all dressed up. It's a fundraiser. And, there was just some things that just went south and there were easy fixes. There was, you have a great presenter coming up to the stage. The lights were really bright. You couldn't see the audience and everything was so dark in the room. So the ambiance that they tried to create was just completely diminished by the lack of light. And
Mm.
then on the stage, the presenter comes up and she stands there and she looks around and she finally says, "Somebody bring me my phone because I cannot see the prompter in the back of the room." They had the teleprompter so far back and everything was bright, but it was really diffused by her being able to it was just too far away. And they had the font. I mean, I had to turn around, of course, and look at the big prompter they had in the back of the room, but she couldn't read it. And then they weren't scrolling, and it wasn't the operators just weren't advancing and keeping up with her. So she finally just said, "Bring me my phone," and it was horrifying. I mean, that's got to be a production nightmare. For one, you've created, you've got chandeliers and you've got jewels and things hanging from the ceiling, and the chandeliers weren't lit, and the room was so dark that again you spent all this money in trying to
And
create that
stuff like
feeling.
that.
And it's a fundraising kind of gala, and it truly didn't hit the mark. And it was kind of embarrassing for the team for the team that hired the production team because they didn't meet their goals and they didn't make them look good. Our whole point is to make our clients look good. They need to know that production team, not us per se, in the back of the room, but the ones that hired us that are writing the scripts and signing off on that decor and environment, that they really have people come up to them at the end of the night and say that was absolutely amazing, rather than people going, "Oh, that's too bad." That's a shame. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want that in your event. But again, either the lack of lighting or just no lighting where it's so bright you're just using house lights and you don't have that intimate feel and that, ooh, that looks really cool. Those are the
Yeah,
things
it
I think that we live
also
for.
speaks to the lack of rehearsal, right? They clearly
Oh,
didn't
absolutely.
test it. They didn't get that executive up on stage to try it out before they went live. So that's a big
Exactly,
thing. Don't skip the
exactly.
rehearsal.
I think one
Oh
of the
my gosh.
challenges in healthcare too, though, is that sometimes I think people go almost too far. And in healthcare, sometimes
Oh,
that
sure,
burns
sure.
them as well. And so I think it's important to keep that context because if you go so far in healthcare, I remember a doctor who came up and said, "Hey, everyone that has an MD after the name hates this."
Hmm.
Because they hated that the money was
Sure,
being wasted on something like that
sure.
when it didn't improve the outcomes and things like that. So it's interesting that, we have to be careful and sensitive, especially in healthcare, where it's like that money could be going towards a patient.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's not direct, but
Yeah,
Right,
it's
yeah,
it's the
right.
optics. And I used to talk about that a lot when I
Absolutely.
was inside of UHC. Every dollar we spent was someone's premium dollar, right? It's my premium dollar, your premium dollar, right?
yeah,
So it all matters. And so we had to make sure that we were being smart and good stewards of the budgets for sure.
yeah. So I want to
Absolutely.
shift gears a little bit. I mentioned AI a few times. AI is in so many areas of this. And Wendy, maybe you could start us off like, how is AI reshaping event production? We see it applied everywhere. Where is it being applied in event production? Where do you see it happening?
So I am using it a lot for helping me with messaging, so I'll write the basics of what I'm trying to say. I'm not a writer, that's not my background, right? My background is in, believe it or not, math. I was a math major, so I don't like writing, to be honest. So I'm finding it to be amazing for helping me write. So I'll get the basics in there and then let it sort of help me craft it in a very nice way. But we're also finding we can use it for a lot of research. We can use it to even get just an estimate on a budget. So I can put in, hey, I'm having a 200-person event at this hotel this time of the year. I need these things built into the budget. Give me a straw man budget. And it actually does pretty well. So I've been doing some testing around that to see how accurate it is, doing it manually and then running it through chat to see what comes back. And it's actually pretty impressive. So I think there's, definitely ways that we'll be fine tuning our processes as we integrate AI more to help streamline, what we do and all the stuff that used to just take so much time to do manually.
Yeah. Michelle, how about yourself? Where are you seeing AI kind of reshaping the work you're doing?
That's a really good question. We have incorporated AI. At first, you're thinking, how do I use that in the production world? But when we're on site and beforehand, but mainly on site, where we've got a presenter on stage and we've got our prompter operator in the back behind the drape listening and this presenter is going through their script and they're saying, okay, and this and this and this. And well, that line right there really doesn't sound like me. I just don't feel like I can deliver that authentically. That doesn't, it just doesn't feel real. And the operator's given some suggestions. Our graphics guys actually, hey, chat, what could you say here? Show that to the presenter. He goes, oh, that sounds great. I love that. Put that in there.
That's
I mean, that's
interesting.
instant. And then there's several different options. And then we had one where the the gentleman was saying, you know what? Sometimes leading a team is like trying to pull a donkey up the hill. And the graphics guy's like, AI donkey going up the hill, and all of a sudden, ding, there it is. It was so
Oh,
we're finding that it's really fun to be able to have those options instantly. Not everybody in the room is running around trying to figure out the right words that could be replaced with something on the screen. We're able to just really play with and say, hey, give me this, give me a graphic that shows this. And it could be more animated or it could be actually a picture. So we're starting to have a lot of fun with AI in the production world. We did one, my client wasn't sold on it, but it was a song. We took all of the key messages to the meeting and the meeting title and made a song out of it. And we actually thought it was pretty fun and kitschy, but the client's like, no. But it was really great. And we were able to produce a song in during a break and came back and it was a fun thing throughout the meeting, but we actually did play it during the show. But it's just there's so many fun options now to incorporate AI into production.
yeah,
There's
you
also
guys are
some
starting
practical
slow.
things too, though, around translation, live
Oh, absolutely.
captioning. Live captioning used to be pretty challenging to do and pretty
Oh,
expensive, honestly.
right, right.
Now there's AI that you can just, it
Hmm.
can listen and it puts the captioning in. It can change it. You can get an app where you're on your phone. So if you speak Japanese, it's converting it into Japanese and you can see it real time
Yes,
on your phone, capturing all the notes and the takeaways. So I think that has been a huge positive coming out of AI from a production standpoint.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
awesome. I think every event person has, including myself, right? I mean, we run Sway Health live as well. So I think we've all had these near disaster experiences. But, you know, because of our preparation, because of our skills, we're able to navigate. I think almost every event has a near disaster,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
experience that something happens that you don't expect, right? And, you know, Wendy, maybe you could tell us, you know, a story about a near disaster and how you navigated it to make sure that there was a better outcome and that you kind of avoid it becoming a major issue.
So I sort of have this laundry list that I was going to shoot at you. Like, do you want to talk about the hurricane, the truck fire, the presentation that was delivered 5 minutes before showtime, the guy who forgot his computer with his session on it, or just yesterday, my client who put the wrong date on her contract for the band and the photo booth vendor. She called me at 4:30 and
Yeah,
said,
which
we
one?
have a
Pick one.
we have a yeah, we have a event tonight at 7 and I put the wrong date on the contract. She did, not me. She did. So yeah, these
I've
things
been there.
happen, right?
Well,
So
it's
I think
funny.
the
I've been there. I've been hurricane. I've been
the
five
truck
minutes
fire was
before
fun.
needing the speaker.
Yeah, the truck fire
I've
was
lived
fun. I
those. That's so
We had
fascinating.
two semis of stuff and one of the trucks burned down. That was fun. But I think the one I want to focus on is the one where the guy forgot his session. So he forgot to bring his computer. This was before dial-in, so we didn't have a way to get the session, right?
Uh-huh.
So we had all reviewed it and everything was fine with it. And his instructions were bring it on your computer.
Hmm.
Well, he comes flying into the booth and he's like, "Okay, my session all loaded up. We're ready to go in the room." And I'm like, "You brought your computer, right?" No. So luckily we had at that point in time, now this isn't a thing so much now, but we had the handouts that were printed and they were at every chair. And so
Nice.
he just had to wing it and he got in the room and he ended up going off stage and being like Phil Donahue, where he was going around the room and, you know, like, ma'am, we're now on page 40, and it ended up being a super engaging session. And I think what he learned about that was being more engaged with his audience was actually better. And so he came over to me after this. It was like an hour long session. And he said, "That was the best session I've ever done. I'm doing it that way all the time." So from that point on, he would have his content up on the screen, but he always would embed himself in the audience to get that engagement and get that energy from the people he was talking to. And that's the way he delivers his content now. And that was like 20 years ago. This happened.
What a
So
story.
that was a cool one.
There's a lesson there for all of us speaking, right? Like, because
Yeah,
I
for
think we
sure.
all would appreciate that, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's engaging
Sure.
and part
Yep.
of the
Engage your
audience is
audience.
interesting.
Yep.
I
Yep.
had one where someone didn't show up. And
Oh,
I
that's
didn't
fun.
see him again. I didn't hear anything. Luckily, it was a panel, so we carried on without too much trouble. And then about 3 months later, we got a spike of traffic to the event website for his name. And I was like, what is
Oh,
this? And I hadn't seen him after. I didn't talk to him, didn't know what was going on. Well, it turns out he actually was the guy housing all the protesters in DC when there was something going down. And so he was in the news. And of course, I was the first Google page for that, even though he actually
Funny.
didn't speak at the event.
Oh, funny.
oh, wow.
Funny.
Crazy, huh? Michelle,
Yeah.
I'm
Interesting.
sure you got some stories too. What would be one that
Oh,
you know, have had and, you know, you were able to navigate?
oh, absolutely. And of course, like Wendy's laundry list, we have that as well. So, but I'll pick one that people have found actually kind of interesting when asked this question. We were doing an event in Palm Springs. We had about 800 people, and we were setting up for our event at the hotel, our welcome night, doing our thing. And I actually reached out to our next evening's venue and said, just want to talk to my contact and just need to pay my final balance, for what's left on our venue, and just want to talk timing and go through our setup for tomorrow. And they said, "Oh, he's not in his office right now." I said, "Okay, well, just let me know, and whatever." And I called again, maybe in about an hour, and I'm really starting to feel uncomfortable. And and I knew where the office was because I'd already signed the contract. Went to the office, and he's running out the back door as I'm pulling up. So I went in and I said, "Okay, so what's happening?" They said, "Well, we're not going to do your event tomorrow night. We just don't think this is going to be like the right fit." 800 people, and it was a sovereign nation, so we have
Wow.
no recourse. We absolutely had none. So I am not going back to the hotel and telling my client. I'm going to find a solution, and I'm driving around Palm Springs. Thank goodness I used to go there a lot when I was younger, growing up in California. And I said, "All right, now there is something that's going to happen." And I had a phone call, and the guy called me, and he says, "Hey, did you call me?" And I said, "No, I didn't call you." okay, well, I got this number on a Saturday, and I said, who are you? And he said, oh, I'm a sign guy. And I said, okay, well, the no, I may have called you because we needed an extra letter for a sign, but that was 3 days ago. And he says, well, okay, sorry. Well, let me know if there's anything else you need. And in my frustration, I said, give me a hunk of ground and some, you know, give me a space where I can
A
hold
party
this
for
event.
800.
Yeah, yeah, give me a space for 800 and I'll be your best friend ever. And he says, well, why don't you go to this place called the Palapa? And it was like an art community. I'm like, Palapa, that place is like a hippie camp. He said, oh, not anymore. It's actually pretty cool. And he says, where are you? And I told him, he said, are you right below Bob Hope's house? And I said, yep. He goes, it's right to your right. Pulled in there and talked to the guy. And he says, well, this is a $10,000 a night venue. And I said, I don't have 10 grand and I need it tomorrow night. So anyway, the guy came back and he says, let me talk to my wife. Comes back and he says, well, whatever your budget is, or cover my kids' braces. Let's do it. So we took all the catering. We had a comedian from Las Vegas coming in. We had rentals and florals and lighting and everything. Once I knew that 100% of everything could be transferred to this new location without any stress at all, I went back to my client and we're walking around the pool and I said, hey, I have a question. How much do you trust me? And he's like, oh my God, I trust you with my life. I'm just, wait a minute, why? And I told him everything that happened. And he says, I never trusted those guys from the beginning. So then he marched through it just like a soldier and says, okay, let's do it. And then the next day he got a standing ovation from his superiors, the whole group, that it could not have been better. They couldn't even imagine it being at the other location. So if you have really good vendors and you have people that can turn on a dime just like you can make things happen and they can actually be better than you anticipated in the beginning.
Yeah, it's such a highlight for, when I think of the Sway Health community having to host their own user conferences, their own events,
Oh,
it's good to have good partners. If you don't, you're in trouble. But the right partners definitely make you look good. And it's funny,
yeah,
the attendees often don't even realize anything. They're just like, okay,
absolutely.
it's good.
Yeah, they don't know any different. How could it be any better? This is the best experience ever.
It's so interesting. Well, as we kind of wrap up, I want to do a quick lightning round. Short answers. We'll hit each of you. Wendy, you could start. The Michelle, you could answer next. And
Sure.
let's start off first. Wendy, one thing a healthcare marketer should stop doing immediately.
I think we should all stop doing events that we're not measuring.
Mm.
So events without data is really just planning a party.
Oh, I like that. Michelle, what would you say a healthcare marketer should stop doing immediately?
Packing their agenda so full that people lose their attention. They're
Mm.
it there I mean there is data that says that the average attention span is 15 to 20 minutes. That's why TED Talks are 20 minutes or less.
Mm. I have a lot of feelings about that. It's about the connection, and then we pack the agenda so full that they can't connect. Like it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
That's a problem. All right, Wendy, how about the best event marketing thing you've ever seen?
It's hard because there's so many cool
I
things
know
going
when
on,
you
but
say best, it's always hard.
I know, right? So I'm gonna reflect on a report that I recently read. BizBash came out with their top 2025 experiential events. And so I was reading that the other day and saw what Pinterest did at the in Cannes, and it was called the Pinterest Manifestival, which is Manifestation Festival. And so it was all about engagement, and Pinterest is the brand of beautiful things, right? So it was all these different experiential components, so people could come in and they could get a cool tattoo. They had a dessert bar where you could brand a macaron cookie. They just had all these fun experiential things that people were doing where they sat down and got to be creative and just kind of let their creativity flow. And I just thought that was a super super fun event.
Wow. Michelle, best event marketing thing you've seen?
Oh, one thing I thought was pretty cool is hiding a building behind a very thin, light fabric. I mean, the whole building, side to side, top to bottom, and then having the logo revealed that was what, vinyl graphic application of the new logo right in the middle of the building. But as that, what brought the fabric down was repelling uh, guys on the ropes and the cables from the top of the building, rappelling down the sides of the building and the face of the building, bringing this fabric down with them to reveal the new logo. So you had not just technology helping with the effect and the impact of the reveal, but you actually had people, and you're looking up there at the top going, oh my gosh, they're at the top of the building. Oh my God, they're jumping off the sides and scaling the building, bringing the fabric down with them, and then the fireworks and everything around the new logo.
Wow, so interesting.
It's pretty cool.
All right, Wendy, last one event trend to lean into in 2026.
Going back to data. It's all about the data right now and ROI.
Hmm. Digging into the
Personalizing
data,
events,
huh?
using data to personalize, making good
Hmm.
decisions on what events to invest in. It's the mantra right now.
Yeah, I love that. Michelle, what trend in 2026 are you looking at?
Oh, leaning hard into the see, feel, and do, getting back into what's the first impression? What are they seeing? And then as they're in their meeting or in their breakout, what are they feeling? How do they feel? Do they feel engaged? Do they feel heard? Do they feel inspired? And then what do they do about that? How do they leave that room with that energy, with that inspiration, and actually do it and apply it and show ways of tracking the what has been done since that meeting, and really being able to share that if it's an annual meeting. So, last year was amazing. This is what we saw, this is what we felt, and this is what we did, and here's the facts. Here's Wendy's data. This is shows that the money was worth it, that the experience was worth it, but it's really just getting all of those senses engaged.
I like that. See, feel, do. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'll throw one in here as we wrap up. For me, it's about creating connection. Like, how can I create the maximum number of connections and deep connections at an event? I think that's what transforms the experience for those that attend, and that's what we focus on at Sway Health Live, as you can imagine, is like, how can we create so that they can literally walk away with friends, not just connections, right?
Oh,
And I think we
absolutely.
all are, just thirsting for it. So there you go. Mine's deep
Yeah.
connection.
I agree
Love
with you.
that. Love that.
Yep.
Yeah. Wendy, Michelle, I appreciate you coming on. I love hearing your stories. I love hearing about the keys to running great events and some of the expertise that you've gleaned over all the years doing it. And thanks for sharing it with the Sway Health community. And thanks for everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare marketing content like this, be sure to check it out at sway.health. Thanks so much.
Sean?
Thank you.